Hey everybody, as you know, we've been working so far on just solving one-step equations. So those are really equations that just have one operation in them. So it just takes one step to undo that operation and get x by itself, right? When we're solving, our goal is always to get x by itself. So I'm going to make a note there. So our goal is to get x by itself. So now the equations that we're going to start working on today are called two-step equations. So obviously they're going to be a little more complex. But if you look at the targets, the only thing that changed is that now instead of one step, we're looking at two-step equations. So we're still solving and we're still going to be verifying our solution, right? To us, that really means checking our answer when we're done to make sure we've got the right answer. Now, two-step equations, right, I have some examples here. So you can see, if I look at this first term, 2x, I know when those are pushed right next to each other there that I've got some multiplication happening. And I also see that I've got addition happening. So I've got two different operations. So the first thing that's going to be really important is that when we're solving equations that have both multiplication, division, and addition or subtraction, we're always going to undo that addition or subtraction first. So if I look at these problems here, I can see, right, we're always focused on the side that has the variable. So here I have a 5 that's being added. Here I have a 7 that's being subtracted. Over here, my x is on the other side. I have a 9 that's being subtracted. And here I have a -8. So you can see that thing that's being added or subtracted that I need to move first, it's always a number by itself or a constant. So really, our goal here, the first step, we have to move the constant term away from the variable. That's the first thing we're going to do, is kind of get this constant away from the variable. Okay, so in terms of steps, let's actually go through an example here. We're first going to add or subtract the constant that is hanging out on the same side as the variable. So I'm going to draw my line here, right? I notice my variable here is on the left. So this is the side of the equation that I'm going to focus on. So I see I have a +4 here. That's the first thing I need to get rid of. I need to get rid of that number that's just kind of hanging out. So we're going to use the same idea of inverse or opposite operations to do that. Since I'm adding 4 here, I know to get rid of it, I'm going to have to subtract 4. And just like before, I have to do the same thing on both sides of my line. So now this is going to go away. I have a 2x left over. And I know that's equal to 16 minus 4, which is 12. Now, right, just like it says here, after I've done the first step, all I have left is a one-step equation. And I handle it the same as we have been for the last week. Okay, so we're going to split up the best friends. We call these guys that are kind of connected right next to each other, those are our best friends. We're going to split them up by either dividing both sides of the equation or multiplying both sides of the equation, depending on what operation is in our problem. So if I look here, I know 2x, this means multiplication here. So to undo that, I'm going to have to divide by 2 on both sides. So we get x equals 6. Now, we want to make sure that we check our answers still. That's still going to be really important. So I'm going to put that step down here since I'm a little out of room. Remember, the first thing we do is we're just going to copy the original equation. So I'm going to have 2x plus 4 is equal to 16. And now our goal is to substitute a value for x. So I'm going to put 2. I'm going to put some parentheses because I'm replacing x. And then bring down my plus 4. So the important thing for us to remember when we're checking is we're really just taking the solution that we found. In that case here, my solution was 6. That same number has to go here when I check. So I'm replacing or substituting 6 for x. And now I'm going to use my calculator because I want to be sure that this is the right answer. I don't want to guess on this check step because I might miss an opportunity to find an error. So I'm going to type this in just how it looks. So I have 2, and in parentheses I have 6. Then I'm going to add 4, and that gives me 16. Since 16 is what I was looking for, I know that I'm correct, and I can move on to the next problem. So that's how these two-step equations are going to go. I'm going to do maybe 4 or 5 more examples on the back of the sheet just to give you some more examples, and then you'll be working on practice. So for the quiz that's coming up on Friday, you'll have 1 and 2-step equations. So let's go ahead and flip over. And like I said, we're not going to do all 8 of these. I think I'll pick maybe 4 or so to do. So let's start with number 1. This is a nice basic equation. First thing I always do is I draw my line. I look and I realize my variable's on the left side, so that's where I want to focus. So the first thing I notice is I've got this negative 15. It's not attached to the x, it's just kind of hanging out. So that's the first thing that needs to go. Since this is subtraction, I'm going to do the opposite of subtracting, which is adding. And I'm going to add that number to both sides. So those are going to cancel. I bring down my 6x. And if I use my calculator to add 9 and 15, I'm going to get 24. Remember, now we're just back to our one-step equation, and you guys already know how to do this. Here's 6x. That's telling me I have multiplication. To undo that, I need to divide both sides. Notice I'm showing my division line here, right? That fraction bar. That makes it really clear to myself and maybe whoever is grading my paper that I know I have to divide. So now this is going to cancel. I'm going to get x equals, and 24 divided by 6 gives me 4. So I think that my solution is 4. But again, I'm always going to check to make sure. So I'm going to copy my original equation. 6x minus 15 is equal to 9. I'm just going to work with my expression here, and I'm going to evaluate that when x is 4. So I take 6, I leave a placeholder for the x, and I subtract 15. Again, the number that I got for my solution, my answer, is what I plug in here for the check. So I'm going to plug in that 4, and I'm going to go to my calculator. So 6 times 4, and then minus 15. That is equal to 9. Again, that's what I wanted, so I know that checks. All right, we're going to skip number 2 for right now. You can go back and try that later. We're going to look at number 3. This one looks a little bit different. I always start the same way. First thing, I draw a line through the equal sign, and I find the side of the equation that has my variable, which is over here. Now, I know I'm not going to deal with this negative 2 yet because that's what's stuck to my variable. I'm going to deal with this number that's all by itself. Now, even if we don't see a plus sign, we know this is a positive 5. So to get rid of a positive 5, I need to subtract 5 on both sides. Let me wait for that to adjust. Sorry about that. Now, 5 minus 5 is 0, which is great because I wanted that to go away. Now I just have to remember to take this negative with me. Over here, if I do 1 minus 5, again, please don't guess on here. 1 minus 5 gives me a negative 4. I'm still looking at my side with the y. Here I see it's a negative 2 times y. So again, to undo that, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2. Okay, these are going to cancel. I have y by itself, and a negative 4 divided by a negative 2 is just going to give me a positive 2. And then, as always, right, we don't move on without checking our work. So, first step is copy the equation. Now, my variable's over here this time, so I'm going to focus here. So I have 5 minus 2, and then in parentheses goes my solution. Well, my solution was y equals 2, so that's what I'm going to put in this space here. Again, I go to my calculator to check. 5 minus 2 times 2 gives me a 1, and I check out. Let's see, in the interest of time, because I don't want this video to go too long, let's go ahead and look at number 6. And then you'll have plenty of time to practice in class when we're here to answer questions. So let's look at number 6, because I know this is a tricky one when we were doing one steps. Again, same kind of steps. I find my variable, which is on this side of the equation. So I find that number that's just kind of hanging on. And I find out I have a negative 5. Since this is a minus, I want to do the opposite. So I'm going to add 5. Now these go away. I bring down what's left over. So I have to take that negative. Negative 3 over 2 times x equals 10 plus 5, which is 15. Now, here's one of those more tricky one-steppers. Here, I'm multiplying x by a fraction. So, we know to undo multiplication, we could divide. But if you think back, right, we said that dividing by a fraction is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And so that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to multiply, so I'm going to put all this in parentheses. I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so the sign stays the same, and I just flip my fraction. So now these reciprocals, when I multiply them together, I just get 1. So my x comes down, and now here I can use my calculator to help me out. So I have 15, and then parentheses, I have a negative 2/3. And I get a negative 10. So that's what I think my solution is. So here comes the check. Negative 3 over 2 times x minus 5 is equal to 10. So I'm going to go here, negative 3 over 2. I'm going to give myself a space for that x, and then subtract 5. Okay, sorry, someone was just at the door. All right, so now we're going to replace, right, in those parentheses go the solution to our equation. So I'm going to plug in a negative 10 there, and then I'm going to check with my calculator. This looks messy, but remember you have your calculator to help you out. So I have a negative 3 over 2, and parentheses I have a negative 10. I'm being sure to copy it exactly as it is here, and then I'm subtracting 5, and when I do that, I find out that 10 is equal to 10, and I know that my answer is correct. So once you finish this video, you can always go back if you need to. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 problems left on this page, so that's what I want you to work through. We haven't gone through all the types, but I want you to do your best on these, and of course you can always call me or Mrs. Janice over to help as you're working through these. All right, thanks for watching.